Okay, so get ready, because this deep dive might surprise you.
Oh.
We're talking Stranger Things,
Okay.
but also the gospel.
Really?
Maybe
Stranger Things and the gospel.
I know, right? Sounds kind of wild.
Yeah, bit.
But stick with us on this.
Okay.
We're going deep on this book by Mike Heiser. It's called The World Turned Upside Down. And basically, he makes this case that this show...
Stranger Things.
Yeah, Stranger Things. It's got these like hidden connections to some really deep spiritual stuff.
Oh, interesting. And Heiser, he was a biblical scholar, right? Not like a pop culture critic or something.
Exactly. Like he wasn't trying to force a connection or anything. It's more like he started to see how this show, Stranger Things, it kind of accidentally taps into these big questions about faith, fear, belonging, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know that show, Stranger Things, it really gets those feelings right. Like being lost, facing the unknown, the whole vibe.
Totally. Like you've got these kids fighting actual monsters. There's this whole alternate dimension thing going on.
Right.
Winona Ryder talking to Christmas lights. It's a trip.
It's a lot. But you know, Heiser, he really picks up on that lost feeling. And he connects it to what the gospel says about humanity. This idea that without some kind of connection to God, we're all kind of wandering around spiritually lost. He even compares it to, remember Will Byers?
Oh, yeah. Stuck in the upside down.
Exactly.
That creepy line he says, when he's trapped,
Which one?
he's like, he likes it cold.
Oh, yeah. Still gives me chills.
Every time.
But, you know, Heiser uses that line to make a really interesting point. He says, it's like we're unknowingly feeding the very things that are hurting us spiritually.
Oh.
You know, our bad habits, those anxieties we have. Like we think we're in control, but actually we could be making those darker parts of ourselves even stronger.
Wow. That's deep. And that's kind of what's so powerful about Stranger Things, right? It shows that need for rescue, that feeling of being lost. But at the same time, I feel like people can be resistant to that message, even if it's offering hope. What do you think? Why the resistance?
Yeah, that's a good question. Heiser would probably say it's our ego.
Makes sense.
It's like it's hard to admit we're not in control, that we need help, even if that help is coming from something way bigger than us. He actually uses Hopper as an example.
Yeah, good old Hopper. Mr. Tough Love.
Oh,
Always trying to handle everything himself.
exactly. But even Hopper has moments where he breaks down, right? Heiser points to this one scene where Hopper calls himself a black hole.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
And he says, let me get the quote right. Sucking everything in, destroying it.
Yikes.
Right. Like deep down, even Hopper knows he can't just muscle his way out of every single mess.
Yeah, no kidding. You can't all be superheroes.
Exactly. And how many of us feel like that sometimes, trying to handle everything on our own, and then we become the thing we were scared of in the first place.
Oh, 100%.
Heiser's saying sometimes the strongest thing we can do is admit we need help. That we aren't meant to face the upside down or whatever that looks like in our own lives, all alone.
Okay, but speaking of needing help, we can't forget 11.
Right.
She's got the powers, the mysterious past, that whole wanting to belong thing.
Yep.
But is it going too far to compare her to Jesus? Like, is that just something we do with any character who can, like, you know, move things with their minds?
Yeah, I get that. It's a comparison people make a lot.
Right.
But what I find interesting is how Heiser, he points out these little things about Eleven's journey, and they kind of mirror Jesus' experience in ways you wouldn't expect.
Okay. Like, give me an example.
Well, like how 11, even though she's got these incredible powers, she still tries to fit in, you know, to seem normal.
Oh, yeah. Like how Jesus was a carpenter before, you know, he started his ministry.
Exactly. Heiser's point is that real power, it doesn't always have to be flashy and loud. Sometimes it's quiet. It's about serving others, showing up even when it's tough. But there's another parallel he draws that I find even more interesting.
Okay, now I gotta know. Tell me more.
So he talks about how 11's strength, it's not just from her powers, it comes from her connection to other people, her bond with Mike and Dustin and Lucas.
Big boys.
Yeah, and her mom, Terry Ives. Even that short time with Collie and her crew, Heiser's arguing that it's this sense of belonging, this feeling like you've got a shared purpose. That's what really lets 11 step into her full potential.
Which is so interesting.
Yeah.
Because at first you might think, oh, 11, she's powerful because she can, like, you know, slam doors with her mind.
Right.
But Heiser's saying there's something much deeper going on.
It's about connection. And he takes that idea even further by making us look at the church, like at our own faith communities.
Okay.
Are they really living up to that? Being a place where people feel known and loved, where they can find support? Or are they just, you know, gatherings?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think we've all experienced both types.
Yeah.
The communities that are like family, you'd fight a Demogorgon with them.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah.
And then there are the others that are kind of like that book club that meets on Sundays.
And Heiser doesn't let us off easy there. He says the church, it should be like a family on a mission, a group that's driven by something bigger than themselves, not just a place for comfort, but a starting point for action.
So it's the difference between just belonging somewhere
Yeah,
and being part of something bigger.
exactly. That's a powerful distinction, something we could all think about more.
Yeah. It's definitely not all happy endings in Hawkins, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But now you got me thinking, like, does Heiser actually believe
Mm-hmm.
in the Demogorgon and the Mind Flayer as like real things, or are they just metaphors?
Well, he's careful not to say that every bad thing that happens is because of some, demonic attack. He knows we all mess up sometimes, make bad choices on our own.
Yeah, for sure.
But he also says it's kind of naive to think there aren't bigger forces at play,
Yeah.
things we might not even be able to understand.
So it's not like one or the other. It's both. We've got to own our own part, but also be aware that there might be other things influencing us.
Exactly. He actually uses a really interesting example from the Bible, the book of Daniel.
Okay.
And what's interesting here is it's not just about like one person resisting temptation or whatever. Daniel talks about these spiritual forces that are literally affecting entire kingdoms, like waging wars on this huge scale that most people would never even believe.
Okay. Now that is kind of freaky when you put it like that.
It is a lot to take in, right? And Heiser doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but he keeps coming back to this idea of discernment. We have to pay attention to the things that are influencing us, good and bad. He says it's like that scene at the end of season 2, remember, with the shadow monster.
Oh, yeah, looming over the school dance.
Even though they think they've won, it's still out there.
Chills.
Right. But the point isn't to be scared all the time. It's to be aware, to pay attention to the things that could be manipulating us. He talks about this hive mind idea.
Ooh, yeah, the hive mind.
It's that feeling that everyone's thinking the same way.
Yeah.
And if you don't agree, it's like, you're the weird one.
Oh my gosh, that is so real. Especially these days. It's like everywhere you look, social media, the news, even just talking to people, it's like everyone's getting swept up in the same narratives.
And Heiser's saying, that's not always an accident. There are forces out there, and he's talking spiritual forces here, that want us to conform, to not think critically. It's way easier to control a hive mind than a bunch of people who are questioning things for themselves.
So how do we fight that? How do we break free from the hive mind and stay true to ourselves?
Heiser would say it starts with discernment, like we were saying. Question everything. Don't just accept things at face value. And this is where he brings it back to that core message of both Stranger Things and the gospel. Even when things are dark and messed up, even when we feel alone, we have a choice. We can give in to fear or we can choose to fight. And the good news is we don't have to do it alone. Like Eleven had her friends, we have each other. And maybe even more importantly, we have access to a power that's way bigger than us, something that can help us overcome even when it feels impossible.
So we've gone from Demogorgons to Daniel hive minds to Hopper.
It's quite a range.
It really is.
Yeah.
But it all comes back to this. Facing our fears, finding that strength to choose hope, and remembering that even when things seem hopeless, they might not be.
Exactly. And that's what I love about Heiser's book. It's not about telling you what to think. It's about helping you to see things differently, to look deeper, to be open to the possibility that there's more to this life than what we see on the surface.
So next time you're watching Stranger Things or just scrolling through your phone, remember, there might be more going on beneath the surface than you realize.
What if the real upside down is the way we've been conditioned to see the world?
And that the real adventure starts when we start to open our minds and hearts to something more.
Something bigger than ourselves.